Hi everyone, my name is Danny and I will be your host for today's event. Without delay, I would like to introduce you to Aviv Cohen, Chief Marketing Officer at Pentera, to get things started.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2023 Exposure Summit. Hope you are excited as we are to dive into the world of security exposure management. We have structured our agenda to provide you with the latest practices of threat exposure management and risk reduction. We have thought leaders of the biggest companies in the world, including our keynote speaker, Michelle McKenna, former NFL CIO and CEO of Michelle McKenna Collaborative. And additional esteemed guest speakers, Hector Monsegur, ex-anonymous Black Hatter and Director of Security Research at Alacrinet, Matt Bromley, SANS Analyst and Lead Solution Engineer at Lima Charlie, Mauricio Velasco, Principal Threat Research Engineer at Splunk, and of course, our very own Amitai Ratzon, CEO of Pentera. We are also proud of our customers to share their practical experience and perspective on exposure management. We have structured the day into 2 tracks, with something for everyone. If you are an executive, track 1 has the most relevant topics for you. And for those who prefer more technical topics, you will value track 2 that focuses on research. You should take advantage of this virtual platform to connect directly with your peers and add different sessions to your agenda. And don't worry, if you can't attend to all the sessions today, the recordings will be available on demand to everyone who registered. In any event, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date with all the latest Exposure Summit and Pentera news and events. It is now my pleasure to welcome Amitai Ratzon, CEO of Pentera, to the stage.
Hello everyone. My name is Amitai Ratzon, and I'm excited to be here at the Exposure Summit. Today, I want to talk to you about making exposure management pragmatic. What is exposure management? It is an ongoing process for accounting for and reducing your IT risk. So what does that even mean? It means that we can do much better with the resources we have. But to do that, we first need to know what attackers target in our organization. That's why the first step is understanding your attack surface and assessing vulnerabilities. But that is only the first step. Simply knowing these things isn't enough. We need to take it a step further to make sure we close our security gaps. That's where validation comes in. The problem is that without validation, we are drawn to vulnerability management. And that's all about the busy work of managing the inventory of thousands of vulnerabilities. Sorting them, classifying them, filtering them, assessing them, leaving very little energy to actually do something about them. Validation grounds the process. Validation finds the exploitable needle in the vulnerability haystack. Validation enables us to focus our resources and make progress. It's time to get pragmatic. So, imagine you're Sarah Mitchell, the CISO of a big enterprise. She's got a lot on her plate. Reports of potential threats are coming in left and right, and it's impossible to keep up with the volume of discovered vulnerabilities. Sarah has a team to manage and dozens of security tools to oversee, and it feels like there is never enough time in the day. It's a high-pressure, high-stakes job. Sounds familiar, right? There is a saying, defenders think in lists, attackers think in graphs. As long as that's the case, the attacker wins. I think it sums up Sarah's problem perfectly. Basically, Sarah needs to ditch lists and adopt a modern attack kill chain mindset. She needs to start thinking in graphs. You see, vulnerabilities are no longer the main cause of security breaches. For example, cyber criminals put a lot of effort into acquiring credentials by social engineering, phishing, or simply getting them on the dark web. Actually, about 80% of web application attacks in breaches happen because of stolen credentials. That's according to the 2021 Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. This aligns with what Gartner predicts, saying that non-patchable attack surfaces will account for over 50% of enterprise exposure by 2026. Makes you think, right? So what can Sarah do to reduce risk? Let's look at exposure management. This approach combines three main components. The first, attack surface, which is about managing all of our assets. The second, vulnerability assessment, which involves traditional vulnerability scanning. And the third, validation, which discovers and verifies exploitable security gaps based on the first two components. Validation provides a path to action. It's how we prioritize true risk and set a path of action based on the business impact. When Sarah comes into the office in the morning, she finds on her desk the results of the night validation run. In the report, Sarah sees the possible attack graphs that her company is exposed to. In this report, she sees a test for the latest threat. Let's just call it Log4Hell. The report shows there are only 2 servers and 1 firewall rule that need to be remediated ASAP to block that threat. By the end of the day, those attack paths are remediated successfully, and Sarah can go have drinks, completely relaxed with her teammates. This is not a one-time exercise. The following day, Sarah's team repeats the process, and by doing so, it becomes easier and easier to reach, maintain, and optimize their security posture. Now, when Sarah's boss comes in and asks her the following questions, she is prepared to answer them off the top of her head. Is our security system really working as it should? Has our team identified the most critical vulnerabilities? Are we ready to face the latest threats? A word of caution. Sometimes people unknowingly mix validation with simulation. True validation that holds the value I'm talking about has 4 mandatory ingredients. Number 1, it needs to include the complete attack surface. We can't just test our external attack surface without testing our internal controls. We need to test both internal and external attack surfaces, including the cloud. Number 2, it needs to test the entire attack scope. We can't just test our controls. We need to test our controls, vulnerabilities, data hygiene, network devices, privileges, and credentials. Anything that can be breached. Number 3, true validation needs to be performed in a safe manner by taking the exact actions a hacker would take. Number 4, validation has to be automated and produce full attack vectors. We don't have the time and resources to manually take care of our entire attack surface with our current resources in a reasonable amount of time, using lists. These 4 ingredients of the attack surface, scope, real attacks, and automation, are key to delivering on the exposure management validation promise. Back to Sarah. Sarah is good, but what about us? In reality, we're constantly being attacked and playing defense in a reactive manner. By embracing the exposure management approach and rapid cycles of validation, we can become proactive and consistently reduce risk. Let's embrace this change and start thinking in graphs with validation. I invite you to join us at Pentera in making the world a safer cyberplace, one test at a time. Thank you all for joining me today, and please enjoy your time at the Exposure Summit.
Thank you, Amitai, for those inspiring words. Please join me on the main stage for our keynote.